Hi, I just wanted to talk about the different options we have for the vitamin pop-up shops. I just want to start talking a little bit about distribution. So I just want to talk about the different kinds of distribution that there are. The first one is exclusive, which is just protected territories in a given geographical area. And then the next two are kind of opposites of each other. The first one is selective, which is a limited number of outlets in a specific area. So you're only using a limited number out of the total that you possibly could to sell the products. And then the opposite of that would be intensive, which is using all of the available outlets in an area. So with these pop-up shops, this business is using selective distribution because it's limiting the number of locations, specifically in smaller markets. The next thing I want to talk about is the relationship between customer service and distribution. So obviously, the better a business is at distribution, the better customer service is going to be. Businesses who have poor distribution result in having dissatisfied customers. So the customer will have a positive experience if they can locate and purchase the merchandise that they want to easily. So having these pop-ups in smaller markets will allow the customers in the smaller markets to be able to locate the product easier and therefore have a better overall experience. The next thing I just want to talk about is kind of costs and why we're doing pop-ups as opposed to like a whole formal location. So there are different kinds of costs. The first one would be just operating costs, which is just the result of normal business operations like materials, labor, salaries for employees, stuff like that. And then the other kind of cost would be overhead costs, which is just what it costs to run the business, things like rent, utilities, insurance, stuff like that. So like I mentioned before, having these pop-up shops as opposed to formal locations is going to be more cost efficient for the company, and it will also help us to avoid some of the risk that's associated with a whole business location, as well as it being in a smaller market. So speaking of risk, the next thing that I want to talk about are just different factors that affect business risk. So there are economic factors, things like change in the market. This could be competition, business location, such as the smaller market that we're talking about in this specific situation. And then also shift in customer demand would also affect economic risk. Other types are just natural risk, things like floods, fires, blizzards, things that are out of our control. And then also human risk, which is just human weaknesses, unpredictability. This could be employee dishonesty, things like accidents and illness, other things that are hard to control on the human level. So pop-up shops will allow us to not only avoid certain risks that are with smaller markets, but also be more flexible when it comes to responding to risk that is inevitably going to happen. The last thing that I want to talk about are just different factors that influence customer, client, business buying behavior. So the first thing that's going to influence this is culture, things like culture and social class. There's also a social category, which is just groups and outside influences. There's a personal category such as age, occupation, economic circumstances. Obviously, how much money they have to spend is going to be a big factor on whether they buy or not. And then the last category would be psychological. So things like motivation, perception, and beliefs. So if we take this stuff into consideration, a location having a larger area to display a wider range of products and a knowledgeable employee that can answer questions of customers and motivate them to buy is going to be the best way to get sales. So taking all of this stuff into consideration, I think that option 3 would be the best way to go for these pop-up shops. It has over 5,000 locations, which is going to be a lot of exposure to us in these smaller markets. It has a large display area, so they're seeing as much product as they possibly can. And then the fact that we can have an employee there to answer questions is going to be a great motivator for them to buy. Thank you.